So, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining in for our session on HR Speak. So, this is our continuation of HR Speak Live, which we've been doing through Zoom. So, today we have with us Mr. Sunil Ranjhan. He is the SVP HR at Maruti Suzuki. Sunil, welcome to HR Speak.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Zubin.
So, thank you for accepting our invite. It's going to be a wonderful discussion. That's what we're looking forward to.
My pleasure.
So, first of all, let me give a very quick introduction of Sunil to everyone. So, as I said, he is with Maruti Suzuki. He's the Senior Vice President HR. And I was going through his LinkedIn profile and I was looking at all the companies he's worked for. So, he's worked with LG and a significant amount of time with Honda and with JCT Wipro, National Productivity Council. He's got a couple of decades of experience. And in terms of education, he has a master's in management. And I also saw that he's an advanced TQM trainer. So, what we do, Sunil, is it's not only introduction that I would give, but it's also very important to know about you from you, which is why I have this question where it's like an interview question, perhaps. Please, could you tell me something about yourself professionally and personally? It's up to you how you would like to answer the question. Let's know you a little bit better. We have so many people who want to know about you.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank National HRD Network Kolkata Chapter for hosting me. And obviously, I feel very honored to be in this group of about more than 45 people, as I was informed. It's indeed a great chance for me to share with all of them about my learning. So, just to give you a brief introduction, as Zubin said, I have more than 3 decades of experience actually, and I graduated from BITS Pilani way back in '87 and started my career in IT industry at that time, which was Wipro. Uh, so we actually, it was a startup at that time. Wipro was known for Western India vegetable products. Actually, they were making edible oils, and we operated from Azim Premji's house that time from Fort Land's End. It was a small group of 20 odd people, and we were working on the IT vertical. So that's where I got my grounding, and after that, for a after working for a year and a half, at that time my parents said, okay, what is this company Wipro? You should be with government, because that time people thought that you only work either for the railways or you work for the PNT department or you should be a babu in one of the ministries. And that's how I gave my exams, UPSC exams, and then my journey as a class 1 officer started with National Productivity Council. And frankly, I don't have any formal qualifications in human resource management. It was the at 5 year stint which I did with National Productivity Council where I got my grounding in HR. And then I've been working with large multinational corporations and leadership HR roles. And in the 30 years, I worked with starting Honda's operations in India, the car plant. So that was a very significant part of my experience as an HR professional, where I started from scratch a company and then build it up into one of the big automobile companies with 2 manufacturing operations and R&D setup. And also it was a satisfying experience of about 16, 17 years there. Then moved on to electronics, LG Electronics, did a 3 year stint, and then for the last 1 year, I'm with Maruti Suzuki as the senior vice president. I've done worked extensively abroad. I think about 10, 12 years. I put in expat positions in Japan, in Thailand, and then in Africa, Middle East. So I had quite a bit of experience. And yeah, so a pretty fruitful journey of 30 years, a journey of learning, journey of meeting new people, working across cultures. So that's on my professional front. And on my personal front, I am how should I say? I love playing golf. I picked it up 5 years back, and since then I'm addicted to it. I spend a lot of time jogging every day morning, do a 8 to 10 kilometer stretch. I ride I'm fond of writing. I write books. I've done a couple of books have been written. So that's about me. I think as we go along, probably I'll be able to share much more of my experiences with all of you. Or will that be okay, Zubin, on my introduction part, or anything specific would be more of interest to our
I,
listeners?
I think that was interesting already. In fact, I have a few questions for you which have some connection or the other with what you have said already.
Okay,
So
great.
let me start off with my first question, and uh, something that keeps coming to me in terms of people keep asking me about the challenges for HR and on different perspectives. So for me today, the question for you is because I saw that you spent so much of time in the automobile industry. So my question is very specific to that. So what are the challenges for HR in the automobile industry according to you?
Yes, Zubin, I've spent a considerable amount of time and I continue to be working for the auto industry. If you see auto industry per se, it is actually accounts for roughly 45% of the manufacturing GDP in India. If I see on the total GDP, it contributes 5 to 6% of GDP for India. It's uh, a mega employer. Today, you have all the big players. Probably India is the only country where all players have manufacturing units. 12 companies operating in India. So this, if you study the nature of this industry, it's very manpower intensive. Say, for example, the company Maruti where I work for, we employ more than 45,000 people. So if you see the nature of this industry, it is very, very labor intensive. The skill set required for this industry, people would think, okay, it's a engineering industry or it's a manufacturing industry, but it has electronics in it, it has chemical part in it, it has glass, it has high tech automation in it, it has got robotics in it. So it has a very, very heterogeneous skill set requirement. Like you have a person who would be an ITI, and then you would have a person who's a PhD in robotics working side by side. So, and it's a multi generational employer. When I say that, you'll find in the same company a millennial working along with a baby boomer. So, a person from 20 years to 61 years, 65 years working along. So, the challenge is typically, if I was to classify, one is the labor unions because it's manpower intensive. The auto industry is very, very unionized with very how should I say, very progressive unions, very informed unions. So labor relations is one of the key challenges. Second is the skill set required, because the auto industry is going through a very interesting phase where the technology from the conventional is going to the electric cars, to the connected cars with the intelligent cars. So there is a big gap in that transition in the skill set required. So that's the second challenge I see for HR professionals. Third is expectation management of this multi-generational task force, which is there, the workers, the managers, the R&D engineers. So within the same framework, you are supposed to be satisfying different generations of employees who have a different perspective to how their compensation should be, how should they be engaged, how should companies take care of them. So there are very so you have to live with a lot of contradictions, with people having contradictory expectations. So that's the third challenge I see. Fourth is auto industry is actually one of the suppliers of competent manpower to other industries. Let me put it this way. So retention, because it's hard work, you have to have long hours. We have to have a lot of discipline because it's manufacturing sector which has a lot of SOPs. So the discipline and the work is pretty hard. So now there are other startups coming in place and more attractive, the online options. So retaining the best talent, getting them engaged with the auto industry remains a challenge with us. And then another thing is the speed that which we operate. I feel that it is much lower. It could be better because the life cycle of the product is such where the deliveries, the way it happens. So those are, I see, some of the challenges for HR professionals in the auto industry. To sum it up, managing the unions. Second is how do we take care of the multi-generational workforce working there. Expectation management, becoming an employer of choice so that the best minds join us. That's the fourth. And fifth is how do we bring in a new mindset change in management so that we are able to catch up with the technologies which are coming, which we need to change that skill set, the capability sets for our people. So that's how I see the challenges in the auto sector. Yes, Zubin.
So in terms of the skill sets, I'm just picking up the point when you talked about skill sets, and
Yeah.
uh, I'm from a learning and development background, and therefore immediately I had that question in mind. And I've never been part of the auto industry. So the question immediately that comes to my mind is, in terms of um, skill sets or in terms of competences, uh, do you align? How do you align the business goals, for example, with how you work on filling the gap? So when you have these very done the competency mapping, if you're trying to work on certain areas of improvement, but do you do that? Do you connect it with the business goals every year? Uh, has that been a challenge for you as well?
See, given the nature of the business, it's a pretty stable, I would say it's a very stable business environment where your predictions, you could actually predict your demands, the kind of customer expectations. So that is pretty well, how should I say, it's very well regulated. So you can actually look in the future 3 to 5 years because so on the technical side, the technical competencies are actually very well mapped in the auto industry because without that you can't make a car. It has 45,000 different parts, goes through about 1200 different operations before a car comes out, and a car comes out in 45 seconds on the line. So it has to work like clockwork. So the competencies on the technical side are pretty well mapped, they're very well identified, and there is a very detailed SOP as how the trainings take place on the technical side. However, the challenge comes in terms of the managerial capabilities and the competencies required for managing the workforce. Okay, when the auto industry started typically 20, 25 years back in India, the kind of people who were entering the auto industry and now the engineers who are entering the industry, they have a different way how they would like to be managed, for example. So the challenges are more onto the leadership competency development. How do we manage the new generations which are coming into the manufacturing sector? That is one. Second set of challenges would come in terms of how do we identify what kind of competencies would be required for the future. So these two things are being tried. We have our own mapping exercise, the competency mapping exercise, where the gaps are at what level, then deciding whether training is an option or on the job training or giving them experiences in different geography. That could be the option. So not only training as a part of competency development, we would focus more on training or on the job training. Then third would be on the chance training, that is giving people experiences to build on the capabilities that we require. What auto market will be in India today has already happened 2 years back in some part of the world. So that's how we would like to train the people in the new competencies which auto sector requires. That's how we did it in Honda, and that's how we are doing it here. Just to give you example, currently we have more than 300 people from our organization being posted abroad, getting those skill sets required for running the business in future. Yes, Zubin, have I answered
All
your
right.
question?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. So I'll move on to the next part, and this is a comparison question because um, you have worked in LG. I was just assuming that uh, the two industries where you would have had experience would be automobile and consumer durables. If I've got it right, then How would you compare the role of HR in these two different industries?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question because the consumer durable industry, if you see, I did a 3 year stint there, and then about 5 years I was in the electronics industry, which was way back. Actually, uh, durable industry is a very interesting place because it is very agile. It is pretty fast because if you see the product life cycles, auto companies would change a model once in 5 years. Like a city which is launched today will after 5 years will undergo a model change. But in the consumer durable industry, you're obsolete in 6 months. The model which you've launched in 6 months, it's obsolete. So the speed of action, what happens in consumer durable industry, is very fast, and it is more market facing, if I may use that word. The roles which are pretty prominent in the consumer durable industry is the frontline, the selling staff, the people who are in marketing, sales departments. So the for the if I was to compare the HR roles, so the HR roles in consumer durable industry, which are in sales HR, retail HR, the sales executive, and the off-role sales staff management teams, those are pretty interesting roles. So those kind of roles, if I compare with the auto industry, they are not that evolved. So that is one. Secondly, the comp and bend structures are totally different. The consumer durable industry works more on individual incentives. It works more on it is more on target orientations. Everything is well mapped. Persons, which kind of product categories. So the comp bend structure is more of individual target oriented rewards, whereas auto industry is more on group rewards. Third, policy frameworks are pretty much flexible in consumer durable industries because you have to respond with speed. And fourth, it's a more of a homogeneous manpower, youngish manpower. So managing of manpower is more on the retention issues because that is much higher than the auto industry. And the consumer durable industry, in terms of roles which are very well defined, are actually the market facing roles. So while as an HR professional, 70-80%, it's more or less the same. Your priorities remain the same, but the in terms of where is the focus, or where you would have to take, suppose in auto industry, recruitment and retention would be at a number 3 or a number 4 priority, but in a consumer durable it goes right at the top. So as an HR professional, you are dealing with people. So people in consumer durable or a car industry is more or less same, 70-80%, but only the focus, the priorities, those get changed from time to time. Speed, as I said, is of prime importance in our consumer durable industry because if you don't respond with speed, you will have problems in the marketplace. So these are some of the differences which I see. Both industries are pretty interesting. Uh, Auto industry is more on systems, processes, policies, whereas consumer durable industry is more on outputs, results, more on speed of reaction, speed to the markets, speed to tackling people issues. So that's one of the differences which I see in terms of the challenges and the differences. Yes, Zubin.
Right. I've already started getting some questions in the chat box, but I will come to that just a while later because I just want to ask one more question first.
Okay.
And uh, you've worked in other countries. You've spent a significant amount of time in Japan, in Thailand, and you've mentioned some other countries. So I wanted to ask you, what were your learnings about differences in culture when compared to India, according to you?
Hmm. I have mostly worked in the Eastern cultures. I've in Japan. I did 2 stints for about 5 to 6 years. Then in Thailand, I did about 4 years stint precisely. Uh, I think we have a lot of learnings or these cultures as India, we have a lot of things to learn from these two cultures. While I was working in Japan, there was this study. There was a group of professors who were doing from Harvard. They were doing some research on Japanese companies, and they had visited Honda, where I was working. So they were doing some studies on core competence, and they were trying to. So while I was talking to one of the professors, he told me, he made a statement which still sticks to my mind. He said that Japanese companies are manned by group of ordinary people delivering extraordinary results, whether it is a product. So they are ordinary people. Like Japan, as a country, has the least number of MBAs. India has the maximum number of MBAs if I compare it per thousand people. So one thing which I see in terms of the cultural difference, it is Japan is a very collective oriented company. People may say it's team oriented. I would say it's collective oriented. Teams are of known people. They do things collectively. Their culture is more on satisfaction, not of the individual, but satisfaction of the society in which they live. So that is one very big stark difference which I see that we need to be learning from Japan. One cultural difference. Their order priority in whatever they do. So their order, when they peg it, they say nation first, society two, second, third is company, that company where you work for, fourth is family, and fifth is self. So they put it in this order. I would not like to say how we put the ranking in India, but it is something that we should see. We keep on seeing those videos on WhatsApp after a match, how the people clean it up. It is actually a fact. It is that thing. It is a part of their culture. They do their Hanabi. They have this cherry blossom festival where whole of Japan comes out and spends partying and picnicking under the cherry blossom trees. They call it the sakura trees. After that, when they leave that park, it is pick and span. There would be in park would be close to 50,000 people sitting under the trees. And here, when I walk out in a park where there is a marriage celebration of only 1,000 people or even 500 people, the situation is very different. So I'm not just trying to say what is good, bad, but it is their discipline, their concern for society, their honesty is something which we need to learn from it. Their commitment orientation. People may say, okay, they're on time, but time is just one element. They say that it is a commitment. If I travel by train, the train company is giving a commitment of safety, security, and to take you from point A to point B. So that commitment orientation is pretty, the process adherence, they will not do if they have to count 2 yens or 200 yens or 500 yen or 50,000 yen. They'll follow the same procedure of counting the notes. You go from north to south of Japan, they have the same method as they count the currency notes in the department store, for example. I learned Japanese. You learn Japanese from A school, B school, or C school. The method of teaching is exactly the same. Teaching Japanese to foreigners would have the same method. So their process orientation is superb. And as a result, the quality of output is very consistent. Standardization, their HR practices, people don't know about their HR practices. We talk about the American thought processes, but their HR practices are way beyond what we understand and practice. We only know them for their technical practices. So what I'm trying to say is culturally, they just have this 5 principles. Okay, I have to take care of my country. I have to take care of my society. I have to take care of my company. So these 3 and my family and myself, we come last. Their philosophy is if those 3 things are taken care of, my family and I will also be taken care of. That's the philosophy they work in. So that's a cultural learning. While we are individually very brilliant, in whatever tests that we may take, our English ability skills test I would take, my IQ test I would take. But when I see the output, when we work in those organizations, it's pretty different than what outputs we get here. Thailand, I learned it's a culture where how you can be happy It's a happy country. There people know how to be content and be happy with limited resources. How do they approach the whole life? They don't believe in complaining. They say that, okay, it will be okay. It will be what they call as the sabai culture, what means that it will be okay, don't worry. And they actually practice happiness, being content in life. uh, Second thing which you we need to learn from them is, if you see individual brilliance, they would probably not stand one to one with any comparison with any Indian if you make them stand. But they're very persistent and very hardworking. Very persistent. What I mean is, they will not give it up till their job is done. If they have to work throughout the night, so they're very persistent and hard work. They make up for their intelligence by their persistence and hard work. So that's something which you really need to learn. You need to learn their behavior, their mannerisms, their customer orientation. So these are some things which I picked up from the Thai culture, and they have been some life learnings for me. How do we see the concept of achievement? How do we see happiness? How do I be content? So these are some things which I would have learned from the Thai culture. That's a difference I see. Here we may be, I feel the level of disengagement in the companies, the dissatisfaction with what we are doing is pretty high. But if we were to see the situations outside today, if you were to see, just compare the salaries, for example. In if I was to convert our salaries into dollar terms and compare it with some of the other Eastern countries, we are right there, and we are ahead of many of the countries. If I just compare it into convert it into dollars, with our cost of living being one third of these countries, but I feel people are still very discontent with the corporate world. They're discontent with whatever you're doing. So that is one thing which we need to be more looking at the positivities in life rather than being bogged down by, oh, corona is there, oh, I got that cyclone happened and there is earthquake in Delhi. It will be there. If it was not for corona, there may have been some other crisis at that point of time. So they take things head on. They don't get perturbed by it. They keep pegging at it and they find a solution. So that's something that we need to learn from these cultures, the Eastern cultures, if I may use that term. Management practices, which you would we just hear about just in time, they have this concept what they call as Hanse. How do we reflect after a day's work is over? Take 15 minutes of time, reflect what you did good, what you did bad, what are your learning. So this is a matter of practice in Japan. You see people going back to work, spending quite time in the train. If they're commuting by buses, they're very quiet. They're going through what they call a process of Hanse. I'm doing my reflection today. What I did good, what I could have done better. So, like this, if you see the practices in detail, it's eye-opening actually. How and Japanese people don't talk much about their management practices. People may hear about the Toyota manufacturing systems, but the management practices are way beyond compare. Sorry for that very long monologue. I am very passionate about these two countries. They have shaped me as a professional. So sorry for that monologue, Zubin.
I think it was good to hear that because I was intently listening to everything that you were saying. And I'm sure when people are listening to you, it's best to learn from experience, but second best is to listen to experiences. So when you shared what you've learned, I think that's a good way for us to learn about the cultures about Japan and Thailand. Okay, so just one more question I would really want to ask before I move on to the questions from the audience. You said you started golfing, you love golf. Is it the only hobby or interest that you have? What do you do when you're not working? What else?
See, one thing is, I am fond of writing, actually. That was something which I am fond of. I write some things like on case studies that my experiences, what I've gone through. So I convert it into a case study. So that is, I like doing it, which then writing articles, publishing books. So that's a, I would, people say that it is, I put it as a hobby because that's what I do in my free time. Golfing is that's another thing which Japanese people taught me, that every 5 years you should pick up a new passion in your life. Passion in the sense which you have never done. You do it and give it all your best. So that's how I took up golfing, because I thought it was a during my childhood times when my parents did not have anything. I would see all this people on the greens and wearing whites, and I always thought that it is something which only a very select few can do it. So that's how I took it up, and it just became a passion after that. So, and third is I would like to focus on my fitness. So doing outdoor, doing my jogging. So that's the morning after 4:30 in the morning. I roam the roads outside till 6:30, and then other things which I do is. I have this passion for starting mentoring these startups. So currently, three of them who are working on HR technology space. So I am kind of advisor to them. I do it pro bono, kind of giving back, and sometimes on and learning languages. That is something which I really like. Uh, that's how I took up Japanese. I cleared all my whatever certifications are required, so that I did. And very interestingly, today now I am into Bangla. So, uh, so that's all I do, Zubin. I think
So
when I am free.
any particular motivation to learn Bangla? Why
Ah,
Bangla?
yes, I was expecting this. You're going to ask me. I was actually born in Siliguri,
Okay.
right? I did a part of my schooling in Haldia, and very early on. And I feel that whatever I am today, whatever little I've been able to do, because I come from very humble backgrounds. My parents were migrants from Afghanistan, Pakistan border. They came down here during the partition days. So that's where I got my schooling. I would say my the Bengali culture at that time. I was very much impressed by it, and I during my childhood days it was one of my third languages. I could still recognize some of the characters. I then I thought, and then I was very much impressed by the culture, the music. I would listen to Nazrul Giti and Rabindra Sangeet and things like that. So I thought, what best way to explore a culture is through language and food. Okay, so that's how I've taken up Bangla, and I am into it. And very shortly, I should be pretty fluent in this language as well.
Right. Great.
So that's the reason why I took up Bangla.
Right. This is interesting. Again, this is something that I wouldn't be able to read in your profile, isn't it? So has to come from you. All right. So time to take questions from the audience. There are numerous questions. I will kind of pick and choose a little bit. So I've got a question from Gaurav, and I will reconstruct the question a little bit. He's talking
Sure.
about uh, this period of pandemic and the lockdown, etc. And he's talking about initiatives taken for employees. So I would rather make it a more open question. How did you deal with this situation? What did you do? What were the challenges that you faced? I mean, in short,
Yeah,
what are
I'll
the
just
top two or three things that comes to your mind?
see. First thing, as I said, I have about 45,000 people whom we had to take care of. They could be the direct workers and off-roll people. So first thing, very beginning on, as soon as this pandemic hit us, we thought that what is our prime responsibility right now? to ensure their health and safety and visibility of their health and safety. So immediately we put in our IT systems. We put a app called Wellness Mitra in place, whereby every day people can monitor and report their health, for example, so that I in our HR teams could have visibility, and in case anyone needed any kind of support, whether it is health related or he's stuck up somewhere, so we could reach out and do whatever best we can. So that was the first thing that we did. And today, based on this, we are able to advise people to take tests. People advise them about their hospitalization, what medications they have to take. So that became a very, very important thing. Second thing we had to do was to see after how do we ensure when the business starts, are we ready to start in a manner which would give us, while maintaining safety, we maintain our normal SOPs, how we are going to maintain the social distancing part, how we are going to use technology to monitor in case someone gets affected. So we put in those systems in place so that we were ready when we started our operations in the last week of May. And today we are about 40-50% of our capacities we have reached. And third was to take care of the mental, the questions and the anxieties and the issues people would have in respect to whether my salary is going to be cut or I'm going to lose out on my bonuses. So we also put in the mental health, wellness, and communication systems in place, whereby we could reach out to the teams through town halls, through web communication forums, and we assured them, listen, we are a responsible citizen. We will ensure all things what you were your salaries. We are not going to do it, but we will have certain efficiency steps that we will take to when we start along. Okay, we will cut on our non-essential activities like a family day. Okay, we were cut, but we're not going to touch the perks and salaries and welfare of our employees. That was a very clear-cut communication we gave very beginning in our when we entered this lockdown phase. And third, which was most important, was how do we get people to work and contribute from remote locations? How do we, that work from home was an alien concept for manufacturing industries. So we put in systems and processes in place so that people could be reasonably engaged from their homes. So that's what we did to manage the situation. And we are very hopeful that every time there you are faced with different calamities. Okay, this is a calamity which is of mega proportions, but we are pretty resilient. Human race is very resilient and we can get over it. So those kind of positivities we have been communicating to our employees. We get a lot of negative news from the media, but no one talks about the positivities, how we will be stronger, how we can be doing things better, how we can get our companies restarted again. So that's been our focus in HR to deal with this situation. Yes.
Good. I'll go to the next question, which comes from Sumit Sharma. Going forward, this is about the future. So at present, the auto industry has already, not just at present, in the past year or so, we've been reading a lot about the auto industry, about the challenges the auto industry are facing. The question that Sumit is asking is, and I'm kind of combining this with the question that he has, where he's asking about electric vehicles, for example. So the next, so people are already talking about electric vehicles being the future. So there are two parts to this. One is the auto industry has kept on facing multiple challenges over time, and in the future there are changes that perhaps you're anticipating. So this is a question that you would be able to answer. What kind of changes are you anticipating? How are you preparing your employees, your workforce for those changes? And if electric vehicles is one of the examples, how would you be able to answer this part?
Yes, if you see the auto industry, as I said, it accounts for 50% of the manufacturing GDP. So whatever happens to auto industry somehow also impacts the other ancillary industries in and around us. Last year was anyway tough because it was there was a transition which was happening in terms of from a BS4 to BS6 norms. So new engine and new kind of emission norms were coming in. So when there was a transition from Bharat Stage 3 to BS4, so the similar kind of disruption did happen. Last year was slow. And this year, again, 2 months, I would say April and most of me was wiped out. But what early signals that we are getting in the first week of June onwards, because of the pandemic and the concern of people of social distancing, people are moving back to cars as a safer option for mobility. That's been our data of the first 2 weeks of June. The inquiry levels of our customers is back to 70% of where we left it. So that's a good sign. For any industry, see, technology is going to change. Now it is from a conventional car to electric cars. The car is there. The mobility will always be there, but the mode of mobility, a car may become into electric car may become into an autonomous car and connected cars. So those things are there, and car companies actually invest in future technologies much more than any other industry. It's electric car today is becoming a reality. Car companies started working 10 years back on this technology. The challenges will be in reskilling our people in certain areas. The body, the those will remain same, but more on the transmission and the engine and the those areas will need to retrain our people. Manufacturing lines will need to be modified for making electric cars. The conventional conveyors and those systems will remain. The servicing of cars, how they get serviced after a person buys, so those there will be a big piece to training our people. And actually, auto industry is already done. The electric cars are already there in the market. So this change, this transition is there. Even in consumer durable, when we were there with conventional TV to LED TV, now from LED TVs, they're talking about wafer thin TVs. So that is there in any industry, the change. So, like any other industry, we'll have to retrain, reskill our people. We'll have to. Some processes will become redundant. Some processes will be added. So you redeploy your people. So that is not a some kind of a deal breaker. So it's a kind of a normal process where change is going to happen. So we are not very we are very well prepared for it actually. The auto industry. When I say we, I am talking about not only our company, but most of the companies, be it Tata or Mahindra, they're pretty well geared to meet this electrification of cars.
Right. Okay. I'll probably be able to take one more question, maybe two. Let's see how much time we've got. This is a generic question. Comes from N Kumar, and his and I think I felt this is a good question to ask you based on how I was listening to what you're saying. So he's asking about the pandemic situation, and work from home has become a new normal for a lot of people, not everyone. Um, uh, it seems that people have started adapting to this situation. But how do you remain positive? So that's the question that N Kumar asks. He's asking for advice from you, suggestions from you, how to remain positive.
But yeah, that's because initially, if you see the graph, people were pretty happy working with home because that was something which had a novelty factor to it. You were with your families, and as we progressed more and more, because if you see the work from home as a concept, okay, you work for 2 3 days from home, and then next 3 4 5 days you are with your friends and you actually visit your companies. But this was actually working from home for a long duration. What we see, 2 3 things which happen to our employees when we were talking to them as to how they are feeling. One thing is they feel that they need to be doing much more. They need to be showing that they are there. They are actually working. They need to let their presence be felt to their bosses that I'm really working, sir. So that is one anxiety which we need to tell people. Okay, it's okay, even if you have not send a report or an email, it's okay. Second thing is we tell people to take breaks in between. Don't get glued to your screens for long durations. After every 30 minutes, take a break, take 10 minutes break, go out, take a cup of tea. Then maintain a very very regular routine. You will be tempted to open your laptop even at you got up at 6, so you'll be tempted to check your mails at 6:30. So what we are advising our people, follow your work routine. Like if you were reaching office at 9, log in around that time. If you were leaving office at 6, log out of that system. So maintaining the same schedule what you were doing at work helps. Taking breaks helps, and more importantly, we need our managers to be visually present. They should not. They should make it a point to reach out to all the people, have a conversation with them. So we have instructed all our departmental managers that please reach out to all of them and don't leave an employee that we have not been able to communicate for 5 days at a stretch for that. So regular communication. Then HR teams have been doing virtual engagement activities, quiz sessions, some kind of trivia, then launching what we call as some ideathons as to how we could be doing some better. So generating interest in the people, making them feel wanted, making them to be feel connected in the best way possible, and advising them, and also advising the managers. It's not okay to call a person at 10 o'clock just because he's at home. So that's how we keep our people more engaged and happy. And we have set up a counseling portal where a certain section of people can go for anonymous anxiety counseling through a set of clinical psychologists through a online portal where they can reach out to them. So as an organization, we don't get into the personal matters, but we just get a report at the back. What are the kind of issues our people are grappling with, so that we can take certain countermeasures for it.
Right. And I'll just ask one final question. This is about your vision that you see for the auto industry in the next 3 to 5 years. How do you see the auto industry progressing? Um, what is your vision? What do you see?
See, next 3 to 5 years, I see the auto industry would be growing. Okay, this was a blip, but it will keep on growing at about 10% kind of a rate in terms of the sales year on year basis. For a very simple reason, mobility will always be the need of the human beings. So mobility in some form or the other will be there. Second would be that you'll be seeing many interesting technologies coming in the next 3 years time. Those will be kind of pretty interesting, and many big companies are already working on it. They will become, actually the technologies will become much more affordable. These cars of the future would become much more. So today electric cars are more expensive than a normal car. It is only because of economies of scale, the number of people actually buying the car. But what has happened in the electronics industry, a television which used to cost 3 lakhs is now being sold at 50,000. So those kind of situations are going to come 5 to 10 years down in the auto industry as well, as cars become more of electric products. It will be a very exciting space because a lot of technologies are now converging into the auto industry: electronics, IoT, robotics, and advanced technologies which were used for probably the propulsion of in space aircraft. So a lot of technologies are converging into the car, and car will be kind of a device. It will be kind of your second home. So those kind of products, you can already see the prototypes, which you go to any auto show, you will be seeing them. So those are, it's going to be pretty interesting. They'll become more safer. They'll become more intelligent. So parking will become more easier. So I think it's an interesting space to watch out for.
All right. This was a very interesting discussion. There's so many things we got to learn from you. Your perspectives on different industries, your experiences on uh, the Eastern cultures. Your hobbies, I found them to be interesting, and I'm sure you would still be writing, and you would be writing more, and we would have we should be able to read more about what you write.
Sure, and thanks a lot, Zubin, for hosting me. It was pretty nice because for me, it is why I actually reached out. If you can check that, I would be more than interested to contribute to NHRD Kolkata chapter because, as I said, I am now very much interested in the culture of West Bengal. I'm learning, so I would also like to seek your help and support in this learning process of mine.
Sure,
Thank
sure.
you very much. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much, Sunil.